Thank you, Siko. Thank you for inviting me. It's a real pleasure to be here. And thank you to all of you for putting up with me speaking to you in English. I'm sorry that I'm not able to speak to you in your own language. Siko said that I had a historical perspective, which I think is a way of saying I've been doing this for a very long time. Which is true. But I also feel that the longer I do this, the less I feel I know. Or I think I know some things and then more stuff happens, or I see more things, or I meet more artists, and I have to rethink what I thought I knew. So what I'm talking to you about tonight is partly that process of rethinking. There are things that I'm pretty sure of. There are things that I'm much more doubtful about. Just to explain, I have a double perspective on this because I've worked as a community artist, and I still do, but I have also worked as a researcher and a consultant. All my life I've been freelance, so it's a kind of it's a precarious occupation, but a very rewarding one that has allowed me to meet and see some fantastic things. And the slightly more than 24 hours that I've spent in Fryslân so far are certainly an important part of that. So the work I'm doing now is a project called A Restless Art, and I'll explain why maybe later, why I called it that. But it's about an opportunity for me to think about the practice, what actually happens when artists work with people, and why they do it, why we do it, and what the consequences of that relationship are. What I'm going to do today, this evening, is to talk about some of those purposes and some of the consequences of those purposes, and I'm going to try and illustrate that because Siko asked me to show some of the projects in other parts of the world. I'm going to illustrate that with projects which I'll talk about a little bit within the time I have. But the projects that I'm showing you aren't necessarily the best projects in the world. They just are helpful in illustrating what I want to say. But I want to begin by saying something about the spirit that I see in the project. I've worked on more than one European Capital of Culture program and visited several and read a lot about them. I think what really impresses me about what you're doing here is this intention, that your goal, the goal of the whole program, is to strengthen community feeling through cultural participation. And that is why we approach culture primarily as a means of interaction. I think this is a really important statement, and it's a profound statement. We are so used to thinking of culture as objects, or possibly performances, as opposed to understanding art and culture as relationship, as moments of exchange, as experiences that we have with each other. I have sometimes argued that a work of art doesn't exist except as a means to get one person's head into contact with another person's head. The painting, the performance, the text, it only serves to get what's inside here into what's inside there. And what is inside there is never what was inside here, because of course it's always transformed. And so for me, when I read this in the bid, it reminded me of this quote from Jane Jacobs, which has been one of the touchstones of my work throughout the last 35 years, when she says, "Development cannot be given, it has to be done. It's a process, not a collection of capital goods." It seems very straightforward, very simple, but it's really profound. It means that what you are doing is being a capital of culture. You're not preparing to be a capital of culture. You're not going to do a program. You are being it now. And the process that you are involved in will be transformative if you do it in the ways that we understand are capable of empowering people, empowering communities, and that are informed by good, strong values. The phrase at the top, the Parliament of Dreams, I just wanted to echo, because what I think you are doing with the European Capital of Culture programme is what I call the Parliament of Dreams. I use this phrase sometimes to describe culture in a democratic society. We have parliaments, and parliaments are very good at working out what we think about all of the things that we can talk about. They're really bad at working out what we think about all the things we can't talk about, all the things we're afraid to talk about, all the things we don't know we want to talk about, all the things that we dream of, all the things that we hope for, all the things we can't put into word, all our feelings. And that's what we use our cultural life for, to express all of the things that give meaning and value and purpose to our lives. If that's true, then it really matters who is able to participate in the Parliament of Dreams, who is able to be represented in our culture. We believe, as a matter of course, that everyone has a vote, everybody can participate in our democratic life. We need to take a similar rights-based approach to the idea that everybody can participate and represent themselves in our cultural life. And that's a thread that will come through all of this talk. Now, I want to talk, first of all, I call this project a restless art, because I think community arts, as I call it, participatory arts, as some people call it, socially engaged art, relational practice, there are many, many words that are used to describe this thing. It is really different in different parts of the world. I've been coming to talk to people and meet artists in the Netherlands for over 10 years now, maybe 15 years since I first came. And I've been thinking about what you've been doing. And even so, there are huge things that I don't understand. And actually was reading Rosemarine's work in the Search and the Cultural Compass, which is leading to the Journey programme. It made me understand things that I hadn't understood about how it's understood, how community arts is understood here. So I wanted to speak for a minute about the diversity of community arts and what are the factors that underlie that diversity. And I think there are, you can't see them very well, there are three that I'll talk about. I'm sure there are others. One is place. That what happens in the Netherlands is not the same as what happens in Spain or in the UK or in Colombia or anywhere else, because it is rooted in the culture and the circumstances and the context, as Siko says, that you have here. The second is time, and this takes us back to the fact that we have now at least 3 generations of artists who are working in this field. And if you belong to a generation that grew up in the 1960s, you have a different set of expectations, a different set of ideas than if you belong to a generation that is growing up, that grew up in the post-2011 world, 2001 world, the post-Twin Towers world. And of course, the other really obvious factor of diversity is the vision, the artistic vision, the ideas of the artist. And I'm just going to touch on 3 projects very quickly to give you an illustration of what that means. And I thought I would thrill you with the most extreme thing that I could think of that I've seen recently. This is a project in Kyrgyzstan where I was doing some work for the Swiss government, reviewing their program. They're supporting cultural projects in Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, and it's fantastic work, really wonderful. This is an organization called Ustad Shakird, which means in Kyrgyz, master and apprentice. And it's a program which is now 10 years old and has grown and become, it's essentially a cultural education program to revive young people's interest in Kyrgyz culture. This is the House of Culture, the culture house in a small village whose name I never got to understand, but it's as far as you can go in Kyrgyzstan without being in China. And it's a dead end. This is a really remote place. There's 1,500 people live here, and their economy is based on grass. They grow grass and they sell it. So this is what we went to see. This is among other things. Now, this is young children learning to play the komuz, which is the traditional symbolic instrument of Kyrgyz culture, 3-stringed instruments. They've been learning it for a year, and they are being taught in their school by their teachers, and their teachers have been taught by Ustad Shakir. Now, this is very sweet and very lovely, and it could seem like a not very significant part of community arts. It's some nice children doing some nice things, and if you listen to them play, it was pretty basic. They're not very good at it. But to get there, I drove for 5 hours past villages. Every village has a new mosque. This is in a country which is where generations, there is an older generation which was formed by a Soviet culture which believes in a secular education system and a secular democratic system. But there are a younger generation who are growing up, who are being educated in a more Islamic tradition, and where there are voices saying that music is un-Islamic. This room used to be the prayer room of the village. The village now has a mosque, but music is happening here, and girls are sitting next to boys, learning to play music. I don't know what is going to happen in this country and in this culture. But what I'm trying to get to show you is that what is happening is fundamentally linked with the problems that they are facing in a country that is very close to Pakistan, very close to Afghanistan, very close to Iran, and very close to the real epicenter of tensions about what is culture, what is art, what is democracy, how should we live. And what I think this community arts project is doing in a very small, quiet way is creating a breathing space where children can meet as boys and girls together and play music and actually publicly say, this is a possible thing, this is an okay way to be in our world. So this is for me just one illustration of how different the context is.